Hey, Slick Talkers, thank you so much for tuning into this podcast. And I know that if you love this show, you'll also love my morning show called Good Morning Hospitality with my co hosts Michael Golden and Brandy Canali, as we spend 30 minutes every Monday morning to dive into the industry's top latest news and trending topics. So go check it out on wherever you find your podcasts at Good Morning Hospitality. And you can live stream with us on Monday mornings on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and of course, YouTube. Now, I hope you enjoy this episode.
Who are we targeting? Just like any other business, who is our audience? What's our competitive advantage? What can we offer in our experience that other people can't, right? And we have to think about, how do we communicate with our audience? How can we communicate to that audience through our listing? You know, what kind of photos, what kind of captions, what kind of description, what's the title, all those things. So we have to think about now in order to do really, really well.
Welcome to Slick Talk, the hospitality podcast where we discuss all things hospitality, hotels, and business. You can find us online at slicktalkthepodcast.com and on every podcast listening platform.
What's up, all my Slick Talkers? You are about to listen to the Vacation Rental Mastermind series. I have sat down with some of the biggest experts in the vacation rental space all over the globe, and we created a 10-episode series where we dive in from how to be a host, how to maximize your property, how to manage a property from big management companies, as well as technology and fraud protection for your guests and for yourself as a host and an owner/investor. So tune in every week for the next 10 weeks to enjoy the Vacation Rental Mastermind series on Slick Talk, and check out every single guest that's going to be on the show on all social media platforms. I see you. Checking into that property for 4 when you really have 8. You must be fun, popular, cool. I can tell you know it's wrong, but yet you still play music outside at an oddly loud level. You couldn't bear the thought of your friends not having a good time. Sure, you can get in trouble, but look at them. They're having fun, but now you've made me do it. I have to sit and watch my property. Your friends. You. Hold up, things are getting a little out of hand here. Your guests deserve to have privacy, and you deserve to have a life, while resting easy knowing that your property is safe. If you ever wonder how you can protect your property while you're away, it's actually quite simple. NoiseAware is the only privacy-safe noise monitoring solution built to protect your property both inside and outside. NoiseAware will only alert you for continuous noise that exceeds the thresholds that you select. So no longer are you getting alerts for a drop plate, a sneeze, or the lawn being mowed. That would just be annoying. With NoiseAware, you have control and your guests have their privacy. No need to become a PI once your guests check in. I'm Will Slickers, the host of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, and the lovely folks at NoiseAware and myself have teamed up to make sure that all hosts and managers are protecting their property while protecting their guests' safety and privacy. So visit them at noiseaware.com and use the promo code SlickTalk at your checkout for 15% off of the sensors. That is NoiseAware, noiseaware.com, and use the promo code SlickTalk for 15% off your sensors. That's NoiseAware, the party prevention solution.
Absolutely. So I got started with Airbnb in 2012. For me, it was kind of out of necessity. I had an apartment in Amsterdam that I was renting out long term, but I wasn't happy with the way that was going. For number one, I couldn't access my own apartment. Number two, in Holland, it's very hard to get people out of your house if you want to regain control of it. And then number three, it just wasn't really giving me a good return on investment. And so I'd heard about Airbnb. I'd stayed with an Airbnb host back in the day, as I quit my job in 2010. So I was kind of traveling around the world and looking for a way to support myself. And And I thought, you know what, let's give it a try. Let's try Airbnb. Back then it was considered this kind of this new thing, although vacation rentals have been around for as long as people have been building houses, I guess. But Airbnb made it so much more accessible, I think, for a lot of people. And so I jumped on the opportunity, started listing my 2-bedroom apartment in Amsterdam, and it just kind of took off.
What were the learning curves that you had with that? Obviously, I'm going to assume, right out the gate, this was such a new thing that you didn't have all the tips and tricks that you quite have now. So what was that experience like for you?
Yeah, exactly. So back then there was absolutely no information. But I'm the type of person that kind of likes to do things and not really prepare for it, and then just kind of learn along the way. So I literally just went on Airbnb and just listed it, and I, it's funny because I remember when my first guest arrived, like I had no idea what I was getting into. So I was just at my apartment waiting for these people to arrive. There was 3 girls from the US, and as soon as they arrived, within 5 minutes, one of the girls asked for a hairdryer. And being a guy, I don't really dry my hair, and so that was like the first moment where I was like, oh, okay. I guess I have to think about what do my guests need, what and what do they need, what I don't use, and maybe I should get those things. So I immediately ran to the shop and got them a hairdryer. But yeah, it was a long learning curve, man, because like I said, there was very little information. I had no experience in hospitality, and so it was literally just kind of figuring everything out as I went through the process. But I was very focused on optimizing this business for several reasons. The biggest reason was, I was depending on this income to support myself, essentially. Like, I didn't have a job. I was in a phase where I was trying to become an entrepreneur, but as is often the case, the first couple of things you try, it typically doesn't work. Yeah. And so I wasn't really making any money. So I really needed a source of income, and so I was very dedicated to really make the most of this Airbnb listing business. And so I was very, very active trying to figure out, how to optimize pricing and how to optimize my listing, how to create a better experience for my guests. And so I'd say it took about 6 months or so for me to really get up to speed on what it takes to create an experience that people really love, and to getting the 5-star reviews and the amazing reviews, and really finding that sweet spot in pricing where you're pricing according to demand, and you're really maximizing that profit. So it took me a good 6 months before I really got the hang of it.
Yeah, no, definitely. I can only imagine, like, especially with the hairdryer story, that that's something us, like you said, us guys don't really think about. And I love the thing I always like to say is that having the mindset, because I come from the hotel background, so I always like to tell either newcomers or anybody that it's like you really got to think as if you're like a GM of a very small hotel. You're operating something as a front desk, as housekeeping. Like, you got to think about what the guest sees online and all the other stuff that goes into it. So you had that one property, and now let's fast forward to the podcast that you started, as well as the business that you've grown. Like I said, you really can tell that you are the doer type. You like to get all the information and do it yourself. Just by looking at your website, I can see that you have so much information and so many tools and resources online, not just through the podcast, but just like you have a legit tab on your website just for resources and good information that I think a lot of either new or experienced hosts or managers or investors really can use. And so let's fast forward a little bit to from the period of getting the hang of your Airbnb business to the podcast and everything else.
Yeah, absolutely. So after about a year, I started realizing that a lot of people were not aware of the incredible opportunity that Airbnb had opened up. I helped a bunch of my friends set up their listings, and it just dawned on me that the sort of the system and the strategy that I sort of developed for my own unit was really working very well for other people as well. And so I helped a bunch of people, and then one day I was talking to one of my friends, and I'd published a book before on traveling, which completely flopped. And the lesson that I learned from that was that if you want to write a book, or if you want to become an authority on any sort of topic, that you want to really start with a very small niche, because you can't compete with the guys that are out there, have been out there for a long time. If you're new to something, if you're targeting like a big audience or a big topic, so I thought, hey, this Airbnb thing, and now it's kind of funny to think about it this way, but back then it was like, why don't I choose this tiny little niche that's called Airbnb that only the diehard travelers know of. Nobody else have ever heard of this thing. And so little did I know it was going to grow into this, this whole phenomenon. But yeah, back in the day, I thought, this is a nice little niche that I can dive into. And so I published a book called Get Paid for Your Pad. That took off quite well on Amazon. And honestly, I started a podcast kind of for fun. I just thought it'd be fun to chat to hosts out of curiosity as well, because I didn't know very many people that were doing this, and so I was also curious to just talk to some other hosts and see what they were doing. And so I thought, if I'm going to talk to them, I might as well just record it and then publish it as a podcast.
Yeah.
And the blog was really just started because I needed a place to kind of put the show notes. So it came all very organically. I never intended it as a business. My business was renting out my apartment, and the podcast, the book, and the blog, that was just something that I was doing for fun. I never really intended it to be a business. But then, with Airbnb growing so much, and the niche in the industry is getting so much attention, and all the technology platforms that have showed up, and all of that, it's now turned into my business, actually, where I help people get better results. And I have like you said, I run a mastermind and an online coaching program and everything. So that was never intended, but I'm not going to complain about it. I really enjoy what I'm doing. So
yeah, it's like you don't work a day in your life if you love what you do.
Exactly. Well, exactly. That's kind of how I feel. Like, it's funny. I live with two pilots in a house in Barcelona, and they spend a lot of time at home because they fly and then they come back and then they stay for a week or something. And they tell me that they think that I work pretty hard. They always ask me, "Man, you're always working," and I'm like, "Well, it doesn't really feel like work.
Yeah.
It's something that I really very much enjoy."
No, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the whole experience itself, podcasting, business, helping people maximize and optimize, and using the skill set that we have is it. Yeah, you're right. I wake up and it's like, oh, what am I doing today? Okay, cool, we're doing this, and it's really fun. So I totally agree. For the mastermind and kind of everything you've developed, because I understand my skill set. I am not a writer. Like, that is not a gift of mine. I'm okay and decent. I can type out a conversation with proper punctuation and grammar and all the other stuff, but it's not my gift. It's not something I like to do. So when it comes to writing these classes and these courses and getting the raw material and all the other things like that, what is that process like for you? Because I can only imagine. Because like seeing online, this class is no joke. For any listener right now, like, this class is literally no joke. I've did some research on it, and you got some pretty amazing guys and gals in the space with you that it really just shows. You guys put a lot of work and effort into it. So what is that side of things for you? Getting the material and all the experiences, all the tools and everything onto paper into creating this masterclass that you guys have built.
Yeah, I think I've never thought of myself as a writer or anything like that. Like when I wrote my book "Get Paid for Your Pad," I literally just kind of brain dumped all my thoughts into paper. I would say the thing that comes kind of natural to me is sort of like understanding the structure and the strategy and having a bunch of information and putting it in a structured way, so that people easily understand it. I think that's something that I'm pretty good at, but I don't know if I'm specifically like a good writer or anything, but it's a learning process is what I've realized. Just like anything else, right? The more you do it, the more experience you get with not only creating the content, but also I get a lot of feedback on the content that I create as well. And obviously, I can tell. Also, I look at my traffic for my blog posts and everything, and so I notice like, hey, this particular post is doing really well, and I'm getting a lot of comments, a lot of feedback on it. So I'd say like anything else, it's a learning process, and there's so many different ways that you can present content. And I mean, the in the end, the goal is, you have a bunch of information and knowledge that you want to transfer to another person, right? But that other person is in a different spot than where you are, because that person hasn't been exposed to this information or knowledge yet. And so the way that I always like to think about it is, if this person doesn't know anything about this topic, like what's the most digestible and easily understandable way for me to transfer this information or this knowledge. And so that's kind of like always the mindset that I'm in when I'm creating content.
Oh, that's great. I think that's a good aspect of taking the beginning stage and really finding out, okay, what's something that I know very well. And we see this every day. I know this topic very, very well. This is something I live and breathe. This is my bread and butter. Like, I can literally do this with my eyes closed, versus somebody who, when they hear what you're saying, to them it's brand new. It's never been heard. It's never been learned or anything like that. So I think that's pretty important. So really, what is the masterclass and everything that goes on? I guess we would really I want to do a deep dive on, for the people that are listening to the series. This is in the beginning we've done a lot with new hosts, how to start and how to list and how to even search for the right property or do things like that. But really, you've kind of gone to that stage where you're no longer a beginner. You've leveled up. You're an expert in this side of the thing. So I guess really, let's take a deep dive into the masterclass and some maybe tips and tricks or lessons or just stories that you have involving people starting out from the beginning where you were to the big stage they are now.
Yeah, absolutely. So our masterclass, our academy, short-term rental profit academy, as we call it, is really geared towards people who want to go beyond one listing and want to either manage multiple units or invest in multiple units or do the rental arbitrage thing. But I'd say the main thing is that we, if you want to enter this business now, like you got to understand where we are, in the industry, right? So when I started back in 2012, there was very little knowledge, there was very little education. And it's funny what you mentioned. You were talking about you have a hotel management background. Yeah. So if you look at even a small hotel, there's a lot of different things that needs to be done, right? There's the reception, there's the concierge, there's the admin, the price. You need to set the prices, inventory. You need to manage like the linens, the cleaning. There's so many different things that need to be done. And there's an expert. There's a person in the hotel that takes care of a specific task, right? And the person that manages it probably has been to hotel management school, or there's a lot of education for people who want to run hotels. But if you're running a bunch of Airbnbs or short-term rentals, whatever platforms you're using, there's no degree that you can get. There's no real education that exists I mean, now they're starting to, there's some education now, but back in the day there wasn't, and so as a result, the industry was very new, and people didn't really know what they were doing, and demand was growing very, very fast, and so you used to be able to, in a reasonable market, you could pretty much put any sort of accommodation on these platforms, and you could do really, really well if you were just doing a little bit better than the average, right? But now I'm seeing this over and over because I look at a lot of listings, because not only do I do a lot of consultancy calls with hosts, but also a lot of people email me. And so I get those stories every day, every single day. And, what I see is that you can't do it that way anymore. Like when you're in the business now, it's mature. People know what they're doing. The standard has gone up. The guests are expecting a higher standard as well, because as hosts started to professionalize, the standards went up, and so now the guests are expecting more. Right. So back in the day, in 2011, when I first stayed an Airbnb, I mean, my expectations were, if there's somebody who's going to open the door, and if there's a place to sleep, and if there's Wi-Fi, man, that's I'm happy.
Yeah.
Whereas now, when people check into an Airbnb, they expect that everything's there, right? They don't no longer expect this, like, air mattress, or they no longer expect that they're getting access to somebody's home, and they just have to kind of deal with whatever that home looks like, whatever that person, the way that person likes to live. You kind of have to adapt as the guest. Whereas now people are like expecting this kind of high level service, and that's something that we as hosts have to adapt to, right? So right now, I think if you getting into the business, you really have to educate yourself. You really have to give it 110%. You have to do everything right. You have to, the way you create your listing, right? The way you cultivate the experience, right? I like to say it's no longer renting out a space. It's creating an experience. Just like hotels try to create experiences, right? And the hotels that are doing really well are very good at creating those experiences. And that's the same way, that direction we are going in the short-term rental industry as well, where now we have to not just provide a space, we have to think about who are we targeting, just like any other business. Who is our audience? What's our competitive advantage? What can we offer in our experience that other people can't, right? And we have to think about, how do we communicate with our audience? How can we communicate to that audience through our listing? What kind of photos, what kind of captions, what kind of description, what's the title, all those things we have to think about now in order to do really, really well. And so there's still a lot of opportunity, but it takes more effort, it takes more knowledge, it takes more education, and more creativity in order to do well, just like in any other business, right? Because if I were to tell you today, Will, that I am going to start a bakery, and I have no experience baking bread, I don't know anybody who's in that business, I just randomly just open it up and let's see how it goes, then you would probably tell me I'm crazy. But I mean, that's what a lot of people do with the short-term rental business, right? People have a space and they're like, all right, let's just list it and let's go. And so that has worked for a long time, but right now it's especially in the developed markets, it's very, very difficult to compete with all the people that have the reputation, that have the reviews and everything. It's really hard to compete as a beginner now. So there's still opportunity, but you really have to kind of, really view it as a business, as a professional business, like any other business, if that makes sense.
No, I totally agree. And I think the statement that you said earlier, the threshold in the beginning was very low. And, anybody could enter, anybody could just throw on a listing, room to rent, or, a spare apartment, or, whatever the case may be. And I like to use, for an example, when I first started my chauffeur and event company out in Spokane, Washington, I also was on Uber, but I was one of the first people on Uber in the city. just because it was so new to that area and just got approved and all the other, things when Uber was really starting to become, the big thing. Like, it was huge. And most drivers, when they first started, and I like to use an example, just like you were saying, Airbnb, is that people just think they can get in their car, let it be a mess, and do whatever, or play whatever music, or it just would just be whatever. They're just gonna pick you up, drop you off. Well, I was one of the few that actually took the experience and put on a suit and tie, had snacks, had water bottles, had every phone charger you could think of, had ibuprofen, Tic Tacs, had throw up bags for those who were partying that night, or all this certain stuff. I even had my hotspot Wi-Fi on for long trips, so if anybody wanted to get some business or work done, they could use my Wi-Fi. Like, you have to create that experience, right? You go above and beyond, and then all the reviews come in, and you become one of the quote unquote top rated in the city. Well, it's kind of the same thing with Airbnb, vacation rentals, whatever platform, like you said. I think for my parents, when they got on Airbnb and through their apartment, I think just hospitality in itself was a natural thing for them. So they definitely took the extra time and thought into creating their property. But most people really just, like you said, throw it on there and hope it does well. And I love that now at the point, there's a lot of things that go into where we are today in the industry with fraud and all the other things that go, scams on properties and all this other crazy stuff that goes into it. But I think now that the threshold is higher, the standard is higher, it really does, make, I would say, I don't know, tell me if you agree or disagree, but now that the industry standard has been raised, the threshold is higher in order to succeed, right? Most people that get into Airbnb or short-term rental really want to, there's a couple of different reasons, just like you when you first started, the income, the creativity, more entrepreneurial, all this other stuff. I believe that now that the standard has been raised, that there's a lot more at stake. There's a lot more share or stakeholders involved when you're creating this business and you're becoming standard. Now it creates maybe less so competition.
Well, yeah, I think it's definitely going to be the case that a lot of people are going to try it and they're going to quit very quickly. I see this all the time because I get the emails from the people that don't get their business up and running, right? So I get a lot of emails from people saying like, hey, I tried Airbnb. I've been on for 2 months. I hardly get any bookings. I don't think it's going to work in my area. Like, what, do you have any advice? And then, I'll look at the listing and then, it's immediately clear to me that, that they haven't really like educated themselves. And so, yes, I think there's going to be fewer people entering the space. But I don't know if that's going to bring competition down, because I think what's going to happen is that fewer hosts are going to manage more units, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. So you can already see that there's companies like Lyric and Sonder that have like thousands of units and really creating a brand. What we see with our Legends, our STR Legends mastermind, which is for people that have over 50 units. We're seeing that the people that are doing well, they're looking to expand. So they're looking to, buy out other property managers, and they're looking to take over units. And so I think the competition is, there's not as many people entering maybe the space, or you don't have to worry too much about the people that don't know what they're doing who are entering the space. But at the same time, the people that are in the space are getting more professional, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I mean, for me, what I think is exciting about this development is that, it pushes everybody to be better, right? It's like I like to think of it as a rising tide lifts all the boats. And so, if the bar is higher, then it pushes you to be creative, to think outside of the box, and to go the extra mile and to up your own game. And that's what's exciting to me, that now you really have to think about like we discussed before. You have to think about the audience, the people that you're targeting. You have to think about like how are you going to brand yourself, as with your property, and that's all really exciting because back in 2012 when I put my place on Airbnb, I mean, it took off in such a way that I wasn't thinking about any of these things.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking about like, hey, how can I optimize and streamline my communications? Because I didn't have a reason to, because I was doing really well. So I think the great thing about this whole trend is just that it just pushes people to to do a better job and to get creative, and that's where we can learn and we can grow and we can make progress as an industry. So I think that's the exciting part.
As an educator and as a person that's been in the game for a long time, have you seen that now that there's more education in the space, more knowledge, and like you said, people are getting better, they're evolving, they're becoming more professional. How has that been beneficial or non-beneficial to you and to what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely seen, like if you go on Amazon right now and you search for Airbnb, you'll probably find like a couple hundred books. There's all these courses out there. There's tons of blogs, and I think in general there's a lot of good information out there, and I see it as a good thing, because again, like I like to think of things as as a rising tide that's lifts all boats, and so I welcome all the education in the space.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really good, and at the same time, the other thing that I like about it is that I get to learn from some other people as well, right? So like when I started, there were very few people in the space, and so then I kind of had to like all my content and everything. I kind of had to develop everything myself. But now there's people that I can find inspiration. Where I can find inspiration as well. There's lots of people that are producing really good content, and so I can go around and read some other ideas that other people have, and get inspired by that. So yeah, I just think it's a great thing.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think that for just like a side note or just a random thing is just that the coolest thing I've seen and experienced in hospitality, like I said, hotels and restaurants is my main background. And I've always loved the special moments, the guest experience, the team growth, all that stuff that goes into it, right? But what I've noticed a lot, and like extremely a lot, it's been insane, especially with this project, with the Mastermind series, and just everything that has been going on, is that people in the vacation rental space, I don't know what it is about everybody, and that's in the short-term rental side of hospitality, but super friendly, like above and beyond friendly. Just insane amount of support and I guess mentorship. There's so much that goes in. Like I'll use Matt Land. He was the first episode on the series, and just from the day we linked up, just super friendly, just like everybody else in the series, and throughout the the time of this whole mastermind thing, is just that I don't think that I've experienced anything quite like it. It's a different side of the hospitality sphere that I've known. So I think it's just really unique, and the community as a whole is really becoming, like you said, it's just evolving. People are getting better and more professional, and it's really unique. And I think so a lot of the people that are listening, I really think my biggest advice or like takeaway from the whole experience is that just go in with an open mindset, and you'll be blown away really on what really happens with people and with how you are in the industry. And I'm pretty sure you can attest to the same thing, Jasper, is just the overall like realness and just hospitable spirit, and just everything that goes into it is really unique here. I don't know why it's a little bit more vacation rental side than hotels and everything that I've come from, but I've just experienced a lot more of a community in the sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's kind of a result of just the industry being being kind of new, but also it's a sharing economy, right?
Yeah.
And so the people that are getting into the space, they already have some sort of affinity with the concept of sharing. And so, this is something that we see very much in our mastermind, right? The STR Legends mastermind that we started, like, because the first one we did in Puerto Rico in June, we were thinking, how do we help people that run like 50, 100 listings? I would get emails from these people asking for advice, and I'd be like, well, I don't have 550 units. I don't know how to give you advice. And so the first thing I did is I would get people on a Zoom call, because I have those people in my community. So I thought, okay, I'll get 5 people that run these big businesses on a Zoom call, and let's have them chat to each other. And I'll just sit there and listen. And then I thought, well, what if we can bring those people in the same place? But my concern was, do these people really want to share their secrets with each other? And so that was really the biggest question I had. And so when we had our first event and we saw how open everybody was, and even like people that were in the same market, we had a few people who were in the same market, and they were not holding back at all. They were really came in with a giving mindset of like, hey, how can I contribute as much as possible to this event? How can I help the other people? And that was an incredible thing to see. And so I think just the industry being kind of not new, because obviously it's been around forever, but it's definitely become more accessible, and it's expanded a lot because of Airbnb. It's been accessible to a lot more people because of Airbnb. And so it is sort, in a way, it's kind of like not new, but it's somewhat new. I don't know how to word it exactly, but you get the idea. But then the other thing is, people that go into Airbnb originally, like they like to share, they have that mindset. So I agree with you, man. Like it's an amazing industry to be in. It's incredible. And I imagine you have a hotel background. I don't know what it's like, with hotels, but I get a feeling from what I see, I get a feeling that in the hotel industry, it's a bit more, the hotels are a bit more hostile and a bit more competitive and all of that towards each other, and towards the short-term rental industry as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I truly discovered hospitality. I've always loved people. I come from a big family, so I'm a very social person. But taking the sense of hospitality and taking care of people, and going above and beyond, and being selfless in a lot of ways, hotels really opened that up to me. And so I totally agree, though. My number one statement that I've said on the podcast and in conversations, that hotels are always, not always, but they have been, and for a very long time, been the slowest to adapt when it comes to tech and to other, I guess, like you said, a share economy. It's very competitive in a lot of ways. You got independent brands, and then you have the big name brands, of course, like Marriott and Hilton and IHG and etc. And it's a competitive market because there's so many brands, and obviously they've been around for so long. But I think the more I couldn't agree more with the statement that you said. The share economy, people are so open into giving away their secrets, into teaching, because you're right. When you start out in this industry, you are sharing an asset. You are sharing a space of your own, whether it was a room or a place that you owned and had an investment in. It's really such a share economy. And I think with my opinion and my kind of prediction of just where the future of the industry is that hotels, restaurants, vacation rentals, the share economy is really what's going to make or break a lot of businesses in the space, because we have lower salaries, and then of course the awareness and image problem in hospitality, as most people my age, millennials, quote unquote, or like Gen Z or whatever, are not seeing hospitality as a industry for them, or I think on an episode we talked about, not in the series, but a previous episode on the show, that we talked about 40% of people in my generation don't even know other people that work in the hospitality space. So with all sorts of certain factors that go into the hospitality side of the whole industry, is just that the share economy is going to be key. It's going to be huge into the future of where we go. And that's kind of my 2 cents on the hotel side of things. I think the more they embrace the share economy and embrace the short-term rental side of things, the better off we'll all be, because at the end of the day, there's no stopping it, even if we would like or not.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree.
So let's kind of, I guess we can start wrapping up the episode, but really for what I really want this episode to be guided towards the audience of people that have been wanting to grow, whether they're 5 units, 10 units, 100 units, 500 units. I guess a quick overview of the Legends Academy, and then where can they find information. Obviously I'll link your podcast and all the other stuff into the episode, but just from where can everybody find you, your info, the academy, all that good stuff, and a quick overview of what they could expect from such a thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have free resources for people. So there's Get Paid for Your Pet, which is the book on Amazon. It's the podcast. It's a blog. I've published 309 episodes, I believe. I recently interviewed somebody who has listened to every single one of them. So if you're starting out as a host, or if you have a couple listings and you're trying to optimize your business a bit, trying to get some higher occupancy or save some time by using technology or whatnot, go ahead and check out getpaidforyourpet.com. There's tons of content on there for free that you can use to your benefit. You can sign up for my newsletter as well. I send out regular emails with all sorts of tips as well. So you can do that. You can also, if you are interested in expanding, right? If you are interested in managing multiple units, in managing other people's units, that's really where our short-term rental profit academy is for. So if that's something that you're interested in, then you can check that out at strprofitacademy.com. Now, if you already run a sizable business with at least 25 units, you can then join one of our STR Legends masterminds. So feel free to check that out at strlegends.com. You can see a video from our last event. We're actually doing our next event in Colombia in end of January. And so these events are really meant for established operators who want to learn from each other, but also essentially make friends with other operators, so that they can, in the future, they can keep adding value to each other by discussing challenges that they have and whatnot. So yeah, those are the free places that people can go. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me at jasper@getpaidforyourpet.com.
Thank you so much for listening. We love your support and want to provide the best we can to all our listeners. So please find us online, social media, and on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and Google Podcast.
What's up, everybody? If you've gotten this far into the episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast, then you are amazing, and thank you so much for tuning in. We want to send you 2 places really quickly. If you can, check out the show notes and click the hospitality.fm link. Check out all of our other shows on the podcast network. And don't forget, if you have someone that you want to hear on the podcast, then fill out the guest fill out form so that way we can get them on the show. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy another episode of Slick Talk, the Hospitality Podcast.